He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
Everyone, Alex Marlow Show, monster economic news day today. We spent a lot of time with John Carney, so that'll be most of the show, our economic and finance editor at Breitbart News. We're going out of order, though, today. I already spoke with John before the big trade news broke, so I will break that down for you. But I think it's very relevant because John, I think, sort of predicts a lot of the stuff that's going to happen and gives additional context beyond just the things that I can add to the show. So it's super exciting. I mean, this is just where it is at for us in Trump's America. He is just doing all the things he promised. It's all working out. But I will say, though, before I get started, I feel like I can't start any of these shows unless I tell you what I ate last night. I feel like that's the tradition. And last night I did the chicken salads. We went light, but I do the chicken thighs and marinate them in a Cuban marinade and put a little garlic, salt, pepper, SPG, as they call it. I fire it up. That's the layer. Infrared grill, made in America, gets to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes and seared those things off. It tasted amazing, and it was just such a delightful night. My family loves it. I love it. And you go to besthotgrill.com and you have the exact same experience. I will tell you, I have just completed, not all of it, but I've completed a big milestone on the big research project that I've been working on that you will all be very excited about. So it was a celebratory occasion, and part of the celebration was with my Solaire infrared grill. Besthotgrill.com, high quality, made in America, and can't endorse it enough. There's a lot going on in the news that is not tariff related, but I'm going to withhold it. We got, tomorrow's show, I'll go through stuff. I've got some international things going. I got some AI things. I've got some great email on my discussion yesterday of the genetically engineered animals that we're bringing back from extinction. And my take that we should just focus on some of the ones that we like now. There's not enough bald eagles around. We need some more Komodo dragons. That was my take. But some of you took issue with my lighthearted nature with the playing God from the AI and tech world. And that makes sense to me as well. But you can keep emailing me, aloha@alexmarlow.com. I will read some of those tomorrow. I'm staring at one right now. It's taken a lot of discipline for me not to get into it. But it is Tariff Day, and I want to get into it because as this show is being recorded, we are getting fast breaking news. But I think I want to set a little tone. This is Scott Bessent from, I think this was yesterday. It was either yesterday or today. This is what his mindset's at right now. So the whole world is freaking out. Stock market's down 10%. All these people are saying could go down 80%. Well, this is Trump's top economic guy, a billionaire in his own right. Let's hear what he's got to say.
For the last 4 decades, basically since I began my career in Wall Street has grown wealthier than ever before, and it can continue to grow and do well. But for the next 4 years, the Trump agenda is focused on Main Street. It's Main Street's turn. It's Main Street's turn to hire workers. It's Main Street's turn to drive investment. And it's Main Street's turn to restore the American dream.
He's just perfect. It's exactly right. I love hearing it. It sounds great. And he just so calmly, we need the calm. Trump was apparently yelling at people. I was looking for this clip. I couldn't find it as a clip, but he was yelling at people to be cool today. That's what we need. Everyone be cool. And if it's, I always loved about Rush Limbaugh, where he would say he would tell you when to be outraged. And that is 100% how I feel like I've functioned at Breitbart News for my 11 years being editor-in-chief on the website. And I like to tell you when it's time to be outraged. And because not that I'm on a power trip, that I feel like I've got a pretty good sense of it. It has not yet been time to get outraged. And today we learned that Trump has got China right where he wants them. So right as we're going on, we're learning that Trump has put a 90-day pause for countries on tariffs that are not retaliating. But it's not a pause. It's not a pause. It's a mischaracterization. He's actually just reduced the tariffs down to 10%. So there's not going to be anything overly punitive. But now we went from a lot of these countries at 0%. Now we're going back down to the 10%. So if you were a good faith negotiator, if you'd someone who would express interest in making a deal with the United States, which we're hearing like 80% of countries or so had wanted to make a deal with the United States. I say 80%, I went 80 total countries. So a lot of, it could be higher. Because everything is moving so quickly, it's hard to know. But all these countries, Matt Boyle, our Washington bureau chief, he's actually in Greece right now for the Delphi Economic Forum. My Breitbart Fight Club interview today is with Matt from Greece. It's very cool. He goes through what's going on there, and he says most of the people are in good faith. There's all these people from all over the world coming in to talk about the economy, talk about trade, and he says most people are not that upset, that they like working with the United States. They like the idea of working with the United States. So all the people who seem willing to cut deals with Trump, they're back down to 10% tariff, not 0%, 10%. It's really good. I like that. In China, which threw last night on some retaliatory tariffs at like 84%, whatever it would be, Trump has now jacked up the China tariffs to 125%. So this is just the most unbelievable move, pure art of the deal. What he's done is he's surrounding China, because what he's doing is it looks like the countries that he's most likely to cut deals with quickly are Japan and Vietnam. What we talked about with Carney in the interview today, and I've been giving it some thoughts since we recorded an hour or so ago, is that whether or not you can make these model deals that can be replicated for other countries, and Japan and Vietnam for different reasons could be the ways to do that. And what it's going to do is going to shift people away from buying stuff from China to buying some stuff from the United States. And that's going to make our medium to long-term prospects for our economy that much better. And so I think that's going to be the plan. But again, conditioning people, you're not buying from China at the rate you were, which is why everyone gets 10% tariff. That's more fair. But China's getting the 125% because we think we can put some heavy pressure on China. And China really depends on the rest of the world buying their stuff. And when you more than double the wholesale price of goods coming from China, that is going to send a clear signal to investors, to American companies, to people all around the world that it is time to not rely on China to build your products. This is big. This is a positive thing. It's all more pressure on China. And the fact that Trump has rewarded the good faith actors right away, and he's retaliated even more he's doubled down against China. First of all, China cannot have their economy suffer too much. It's already not doing well, as we talked about at Breitbart so often. They have a lot of propaganda. They work closely with the World Economic Forum to create propaganda. But the bottom line is that China did not do well with that coronavirus. They had all this devastation. There's one of the stories that I mentioned, the international stories that I had set aside that I wanted to get around to, that I guess I will mention it. Amnesty International put out their list of the biggest executors around the world. So the people who do the most executions. Iran was at the top of their list. Saudi Arabia was very high up. But what Francis Martel notes, who's our world editor at Breitbart, the real worst executor in the world is China. China is the country that does the most executions, but they don't report on any of it. And Amnesty kind of vaguely indicates China's bad, but they don't have any data or information because they will not share with people, because they don't believe in any sense of accountability. They're authoritarians. That's real authoritarianism that goes on over there. And so thus, we don't get a clear picture of how bad things are actually going in China. But their morale is low as a country. Their birth rate's incredibly low. Their economy is not doing well. They lost a lot of people and a lot of faith in the system. After coronavirus, they hoard money because they don't trust the government. They don't trust their markets. So their economy is not on super stable ground. Trump has a big opportunity here, and he's applying the pressure in a major way. China is going to have to come up with something because they don't like the idea of rolling over the United States. I don't think they like the idea of rebalancing things at all. I think them being coupled to us gives them a lot of security on a national security front. So I think they like all those things, but I don't think they're that strong. I think Trump knows it. I think Scott Bessent knows it. I think that's part of the reason why they're so confident, is the idea that China is going to eat our lunch. It's just not that good. It's one of these things where, what was the country, Nicaragua or Venezuela, or one of these countries that, who was the original trade war country where the Obama podcast bros were all freaking out like Trump was going to lose a trade war to, I think it was Nicaragua. I got to bone up on this stuff, but you lose track of these hysterical news cycles because they come and go so quickly. But Trump clearly feels as if he's got the upper hand right now, and he's got the right people who can cut the correct deals. So I think what's going to happen, because I trust Carney on this stuff, we're going to see some of these deals come together pretty quick. Maybe China, maybe Japan and Vietnam first. And we're going to see that model play out elsewhere. Other good news in the economy, the stock market rallying huge, major gains, the biggest gains in 5 years. As of when we are recording today, it's up 2,300 points. So biggest rally in 5 years as we're recording. And it might fade a little bit towards the end of the trading day. But it'll still be very high. It'll be close to that 5-year level. It's not quite, it hasn't quite made up the 10% it's lost in the last couple of weeks, but we're So now we're down 3 or 4% overall, but a massive sort of rebalancing, recorrection, whatever you want to call it, in a surge that has brought the Dow close to 40,000. S&P's up 7.3%. The NASDAQ also up a huge, almost 10% as the time we're recording. And part of what I think is happening, part of the phenomenon that we're witnessing is not just related to Trump clearly being the 800-pound gorilla in global trade. It's Scott Bessent and I tasked today was to sell a bunch of bonds. So the bond market had a big auction, a big sale, and there's a lot of snarking online that it wasn't going to go great today. Well, it actually went incredibly well. And we do touch on this a bit with Carney in the interview that we're about to get into, but there were a lot of foreign buyers for America's bonds. And it sends a signal the world is not mad at us. The world's happy with us when it comes to trade. And so that bodes very well long term, but short term it bodes very well as well, because that's part of what sent the stocks rising. So the stocks were already rising on that at the time that we got the good news on the trade, where we're cutting it down to 10% for the good actors and jacking it up to 125% for the bad actors. So the rally started during the bond market sale. So that was the auction. So that was really cool. I mean, it just says great stuff. We were just witnessing peak art of the deal. Trump is at the height of his powers. And I'll tell you, it was so great to spend time with him 3 weeks ago, because I got this insight that I've been sharing with you in the show, that he looked very confident in trade. He did feel like that if we're doing more tariffs, like we're not doing fewer tariffs, we're doing more. We're going to do secondary tariffs. We're doing the tariff bank shot. We're getting tariffs going that will hit different economies twice, because you're hitting not just the country itself, but also countries that country is dependent on for some of the goods that they get to make the stuff that we're also going to tariff. So the secondary tariff, like that's the level of tariff Trump wants. He clearly sees it as a negotiating a tactic, but also a tactic about fairness and justice for this country. The ultimate America first people, and we love to see it. It's just all good, and it's all pressure on China has been one of the unifying themes of this show since Trump took over. It does feel like nearly everything he does is about countering China on the world stage, both militarily, negotiations, trade, ports, everywhere Trump is, it feels like there's a connection to it to try to keep China at bay. So it's great. It's great. So that's where we're at. More details for you throughout the day. Breitbart.com. As always, you'll get more. I want to play a little color. We've got one thing I want to share also, because China might jack up tariffs between now and when I record tomorrow. So if you hear that, just know, and you can anticipate what I'm going to say. I'm going to say we need to raise tariffs even higher. Let me give you some of the basis. This is Kevin O'Leary, who's known for Shark Tank. He shows up on TV with John Carney a lot on Kudlow Show. I mean, he's everywhere doing commentary, and he's a performance guy. He's a media guy. So just know that some of this, just take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But this posture from O'Leary on trade with China, I think, is really important. Check this out.
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration
400% tariffs. What would that look like?
I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. He can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the
Again, I don't interrupt it just because it's so perfect. It's just really brilliant commentary, and obviously there's some of the deal going on here, but he is softening the belly in case Trump feels like he's got to go higher. Because if China goes higher, we go higher, and that's got to be the move. And it could be 200%, it could be 400%. I don't care. Keep doing it. This is the correct move because it's not just about trade. It is about China's hegemony. China trying to create tributary states of every state in the world, including the United States. It's about stealing intellectual property. It's about their authoritarianism, their communism, their lack of free press, or lack of free speech. This is how you do damage to this horrific regime, and they deserve it. And you don't want to do it with a hot war. This is the way to do it. So I just love every bit of this. It's all so good. And Americans are fed up, and we need to decouple from China. This is a way to do it, I think, in a sensible way. So I'm all for the aggression. It seems to be working out very well at this point. Though it is funny when he panders to the Chinese people. I don't know much about the Chinese people. I went to China once. It was a very interesting trip. I explain more at a different time. But remember when the whole world tried to blame the Chinese people for the coronavirus? Because it was actually people like Fauci, and it was like the Chinese government who had done the gain of function research in the lab. But for years, they told us it was actually that the Chinese people are freaks who have wet markets where they're serving pangolin and undercooked bat, and they're putting in the same soup. And that's what's causing a global pandemic. And the whole world just went, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the Chinese people really are gross. They're really disgusting people. And no one really looked at it through that lens. And I've always found that very strange, that the whole blaming the wet market was an indictment on all the Chinese people, the same Chinese people that everyone panders to. Whenever you criticize the Communist Party, everyone always throws in, but the Chinese people are great, aside from the fact that they keep eating the pangolin and the bat. So I don't know. That pander is very odd to me. It doesn't totally work. But I will say, and this is very important, we're on a roll here, and we should feel undeterred. We feel emboldened. And all of you who made some of your money back who are concerned, welcome to the party. And I'm glad you're here. All right, I got a couple more Besant clips. Let's play a little more Besant.
Maria, I think it's unfortunate that the Chinese actually don't want to come and negotiate because they are the worst offenders in the international trading system. They have the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world. And I can tell you that this escalation is a loser for them, that they have some very smart, the economists, the academicians, technocrats within their bureaucracy, and they would be telling the leadership that we do not have the edge here. They are the surplus country, that their exports to the U.S. are 5 times our exports to China. So they can raise their tariffs, but so what?
They can raise their tariffs, and so what? It's so delish. I hope everyone plays that. I hope every left-wing show plays that. Just understand, and Scott Besant can bench press everyone intellectually on the left who they got. And everything is working out great. It just feels good, guys. It feels real, real good. I got one more clip. I can't resist playing it.
President Trump implemented a week ago today. It has brought more than 75 countries forward to negotiate. It took great courage for him to stay the course until this moment. And what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they are in this very spot. Do not retaliate, and you will be rewarded.
Yeah, do not retaliate and you'll be rewarded. Trump warned everyone. Trump even had a truth bomb, I think it was last night, saying it was a good time to buy. These guys are so on it. It is a pleasure to watch, pleasure to behold. And I got to tell you, I feel like we're looking pretty good at Breitbart here. So I have added double pleasure here. All right. Those of you who had done what I had said and bought gold when Priority Gold started sponsoring the show, you would have made a bunch of money. Gold is surging 3%. Today, it's about $3,100. Again, you guys know that Goldman thinks it's going to go to $3,300 this year. It's still ridiculously stable, a great hedge against the volatility. And, if you look at it on a 6-month horizon, gold was at 2,600 6 months ago. So it's up $500 in the an ounce in the last 6 months. Year to date, gold's up nearly as much. So $400 this year. It's just a great time to gold. And I have great partners, Priority Gold. You get more information, prioritygold.com. Text FREEDOM to 24999. You can get a gold or silver IRA, 401k, tax and penalty free. If you want to make some money, this seems like a good way to go. If you want to hedge against the chaos, this is a good way to go. We love Priority Gold. We love investing in gold. So we're going to have some more. We're going to have an interview. We're going to talk to Mr. Hightower, Justin Hightower from Priority Gold this week. So a good time to catch up with them. So it's good. It's good. We're not joking around here on the Marlow Show with these sponsors. Speaking of, you guys know the media is broken. And for decades, big cable and legacy media filtered information to hide the truth. But thanks to podcasts and new media like this show, the truth can break through, providing voices and views that legacy outlets block from the air. But big cable has one major way to control the anti-establishment, and that's with access. They do this by limiting access to something called spectrum, the invisible airwaves that power affordable wireless internet, and by forcing you into their bundles, keeping independent media out of reach. So Trump and the Republicans in Congress, they got a chance to do something big here and make more spectrum available. And this could break big cable's stranglehold on information. So the way they do this is they got to do an auction. So you got to encourage your senators and congressmen to work with President Trump to sell more spectrum if you think this is a good idea. So you guys who are very involved politically, you can call your senators, congressmen, and say, hey, work with President Trump, sell more spectrum. You go to endthecableopoly.org, endthecableopoly.org. All right, so endthecableopoly.org, and you can get more information there. We had a great interview on this last week for a deeper dive. If you want to scroll back a couple of shows, we had a great Spectrum show, and it is really noteworthy. This will come up. We'll get both sides aired out on the show just because it's super fascinating from a news perspective. But endthecableopoly.org if you want to learn more. All right, let's get into it with John Carney.
All right, the second most desirable guest in all of punditry right now, other than Scott Bessent himself, I would say. John Carney is here, economic and finance editor, the person who I think understands the Trump tariffs the best. And I want to get into a lot of specifics today about what's really going on and the reactions and the fact that it's kind of turned into a trade peace with, 80 countries, and it turned into a trade war with one country, all that to come. But first thing, you're going on vacation? Where are you guys going to go?
We're going to Scotland, the birthplace of capitalism. Adam Smith is buried there in Edinburgh. I'm actually going to bring my children to his grave and be like, here's Adam Smith. And they'll be like, is he a singer? Why are we supposed to know him?
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be fun.
So what's the agenda in Scotland?
Tour around, go see, the sights, eat Scottish food, walk around in misty mountains, and take some time off from the trade war, and get away. As you know, Alex, like when your kids have spring break,
yeah,
if you don't actually go away, your life becomes crazy because you're trying to work,
yeah,
while the children are home, or you're trying to figure out what to do with them. So try to go away. And last year we did Florida, and after about a couple 30-degree days here in the Northeast, my wife is now like, maybe we should have planned a warm vacation for spring break. Instead, we're going where it's going to be pretty, Scotland in early April it's not freezing, but it's not going to be on the coast of Florida.
A couple comments. First one about Scotland. Scotland's one of my dream trips because I'm a golfer, and
yes,
it shows how I like travel. Everyone, if you've done any travel, you like it. No one doesn't like travel, but it's not a ultra high priority for me, and that's evidenced by the fact that I've never been to Scotland as a guy who likes golf, because
the Scottish golf courses are amazing. The last time I was in Scotland was many, many years ago when I lived in England. Yeah. And before that, it was even when I spent my very first birthday in Scotland in a
first birthday you remember, or
no,
literally.
I've just
your first birthday is when you are born. That is the birthday. So
yeah. Well, this was right. So this was about a year. It was from December through January. Born in January. My parents were visiting friends in Scotland who literally lived in a thatched hut in the Highlands, and it was so cold that my mother was worried that I may die. And she was so concerned. They called me the wee Yank, and everybody's job was to check if the wee Yank was still alive, So
that's wild.
I'm returning.
So, wow, that's really cool. I would love to do that trip. And John is so right about spring break. And I'm just experiencing this for the first time. Is it basically amongst the parents in the company, it's sort of a dib situation where, because I've got all my kids, like right now, all 4 of my kids are running around the basement, or not the basement, they're the bottom floor of my house, amusing themselves, being really loud. And it's one of these things where if you didn't claim the vacation time, then the kids just run around the house on top of you while you're trying to get your work done. And I did it badly this week. So, because this week we don't have Matt Boyle, we don't have Josh Kaplan, who is my daytime front page editor. And then next week we don't have you, Carney. I think there's someone else I'm missing next week. It's not good. So I'm actually going to have extra work. So it's light for everyone else, and I'm going to have extra filling in for people.
Future hiring suggestion, we should ask people to give us their school schedules.
Yeah.
So that we can make sure that, because it's good. Some people have spring break right now, and I'm gonna have spring break next week. The next person who comes on can't have spring break when I do.
It's so good. I love this. Listen, you're qualified, but there's someone just as qualified whose kids have the second week of April off. So you have the first week of April off. And that just is not, it just doesn't work.
If you could put your kids in a different school, we'll gladly have you on board. But right now we're not looking for any more second week in April spring breakers.
Here's another fun one for California, because we've got some seasonal. There's a lot of seasonal. So I know everyone else has that, but so my parents live in a vacation area called Palm Springs, which is world famous. And so Palm Springs is very seasonal. So Palm Springs in August, they pay you to stay in the hotel, like just because, just so the staff doesn't get rusty. Like that's how inexpensive it is. But in, February, March, April, it's the coolest spot in America. And so a place that I often will stay at for $300 a night. I just checked the rates are $1,100 a night right now. It's just one of these things where it's like, okay, well, we're not going to go see the grandparents this weekend. I don't think that's in the cards, just because it's peak season.
I used to go to Chicago every week before Thanksgiving. Because not many people travel the week before Thanksgiving, because they know they're going to be traveling on Thanksgiving week. So I would take a little vacation, go to Chicago the week before Thanksgiving, and nobody wanted to be in Chicago in the mid-November. And so it's the same deal. The hotels basically were like, yeah, we got like 500 extra rooms. You want one, come on, it's fine. It's okay. We got to stay in fancy hotels, eat at fancy restaurants, never booked up, didn't even have to make reservations.
See, you know what? We got to send this clip. We got to send this to the ice face bath guy with the banana peel on his face. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. What is going to get you somewhere is someone telling you, you know what? If you can convince your wife or girlfriend to do the Valentine's Day date on the 13th or the 15th, you can go to any restaurant in the city. And then Johnson, you're like, oh yeah, of course, that's genius. And she's cool. Like she'll do that. And then you can go anywhere you want. You can go to Dorsia, John, which no one can get arrested.
In New York City, I used to always tell my mother that I wanted to take her out to Mother's Day brunch on Father's Day. Because there was nobody having brunch with their parents on Father's Day. The dads didn't want to do that, So I would say, let's reverse the holidays. We'll celebrate Mother's Day on Father's Day on Mother's Day, and everything's easier. Same thing, you can buy roses the day after or the day after Valentine's Day for, 1/4 of the price. So if you just time shift your holidays a little, vacation, be a contrarian vacationer, and everything, the world is your apple.
Here's a good one that you'll enjoy. So we did, and I can only do this because my kids are my eldest is only 6, and he was, I guess he just turned 6 at the time. So we did our big summer vacation 2 weeks into the school year this year. So we did our big week away. And I could not believe the hotel room we got. Like, I really could. And of course, the reason why we got it was because everyone else was back in school. And, my eldest being in the first grade. So I don't think we can do that when, they're in 4 APs.
Yeah, it gets harder when when there's actual schoolwork that they're missing. But when they're young enough, you're like, really? Were shapes and colors going to be that important that week?
Can you count to 100 and read Captain Underpants on the beach? Like, the answer is typically yes. Okay, so John, we're having really a light beginning to this show that is one of the most serious days ever. And I just want to start with give me a 30,000 foot. This to me, It feels like this is what we've all been waiting for. And I'm not in a moment where I'm sitting around looking at everyone's crybaby tweets and feeling super intimidated, but I do worry about my fellow man not seeing it. But just give me your 30,000 foot on where we're at, because I'm going to get into all the specifics, all the big countries, but just give me, we're finally here where Trump is trying to reset global trade, something that you and I have talked about since, I don't know, the first time we met 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
It's happening. I don't know if either of us ever thought it would happen, but it is. So I'm not ready to freak out a week in, but where are you?
So what I would say is that I really look at this as a tremendous opportunity, but also, and I get a little emotional when I put it this way, but it's our last chance. This is the last hill. People often will say, like, is this the hill you want to die on?
Yes.
Yes. And that's it. What I would say is look behind you. There's no more hills. After this, if we don't hold the hill now, we're lost. It's either we do this today or we're lost. If we crumble now, the world will never believe us when we come to them and say we need to reset the global trading order.
Right.
America will have to decide that instead of resetting the global trading order, instead of making America work with shared prosperity for the working class of Americans, we're going to just have to manage our decline. Our children will have to learn Spanish and Chinese because they will have to be able to the main job for Americans will be translating between our Chinese overlords and their Spanish-speaking working class. This is I actually, what I will say in a more hopeful way, I didn't think we would get this chance.
Right.
If you came to me, I didn't know you back in 2012, but if you came to me back in 2012, Barack Obama had just been reelected.
Yeah.
The Republican Party was not an American first party at all, which is why they kept losing elections. They were the pro-immigration, pro-free trade. They really didn't, pro-Wall Street, even though the financial crisis had already happened. They really were way off message, way off base. Pat Buchanan had tried to set the party right in 1992 and 1996, and then tried to run as a Reform Party candidate in 2000. We did really well a couple times. In 96, we won New Hampshire. We came second in a bunch of primaries. We came very close. But ultimately, the political machinery crushed us. And so in 2012, if you had come to me and said, John, what's going to happen? I said, we don't have an America First Party. There's nothing we can do to arrest the inevitable decline that's going to happen. I basically quit politics. I wrote about banks. I worked for Legacy Media. I was at the CNBC and Wall Street Journal because I didn't think there was anything we could do. But God loves America, and there was something we could do. Donald Trump came around, and we reoriented the party. By the way, look, not to butter you up, but Breitbart came along too.
It's true. No, it's a big deal.
You guys reoriented the American Party. We reshaped American politics, and we gave ourselves another chance at this. We can actually do this. It is a necessary restructuring. This is something that Scott Bassett has talked about a lot, and it's very important. This isn't a war of choice that we're fighting, right? This isn't like a preemptive strike. This is a war of necessity. This is our last great stand. We either win here or it's so long America. And so where we stand right now, it's actually working out better than I even thought it would. We announced the tariffs.
Yeah. No, hold on. So I want to get into this, but I want to ask, because you brought up Buchanan, which is so interesting, because I was just thinking about this, and if people are watching my eyes dart across the screen and the feeds, I was just reminded by you that I did an interview with Pat Buchanan about Trump's first 100 days in the first administration, and I think a lot of my smart friends, some of them are a little older, but some of them about my age, but a little bit older, not like a half a generation older, really saw him as a real leading light that ended up here. And, for me, I came to Trump first as a media figure, so I always thought Andrew was the precursor to Trump. And I really got hip to Trump's politics, just sort of as a piecemeal thing that just sounded like he was right about everything. Everything he was saying politically, I was like, I actually agree with all this. And then, when me and Steve were running editorial Breitbart at the same time, we would just kind of look at each other and think, oh, this is the guy. And that was kind of my evolution there. But it does seem like a lot of you intellectual guys who are, 40 to 50 range, it seems like Buchanan was your guy.
Yeah. So Pat Buchanan really was pretty formative for me. He correctly convinced me that America's post-Cold War interventionism was crazy. So I opposed, I was a kid at the time, but I imposed our toppling of the government of Panama.
Yeah.
I opposed the incursion that we did in Somalia. I still can't get anybody to explain what the heck we were doing during the Black Hawk Down days in Somalia. Why were we there? I opposed the bombing of Serbia. I opposed the overthrow of the government of Haiti. That what we had become crazily interventionist, and that and I opposed the first Gulf War, and that culminated. And this was all Pat Buchanan's influence. He was out there saying, we should be looking out for America first. We shouldn't become the policemen of the world. And he had the same philosophy on trade, that we needed a trade policy that worked for America, just like we needed a national security policy that worked for America. And look, unfortunately, the cost of America getting this wrong and not seeing what Pat saw was that we allowed the WTO to form and to allow China to become a member of the WTO. We fought the insane Iraq war for nothing, to create a breeding ground for ISIS, a creche for terrorism. And so Pat warned us about this, and he was right. The thing was, a lot of people didn't believe it was going to go the way he said. Oh no, China, it's going to come into the WTO and it'll become a normal trading partner. It'll become a democracy. This is going to be wonderful. Of course we should do this. Oh, you're crazy about this American intervention. American might's going to, democratize the rest of the world. So trade and weapons, guns and butter, I guess, to use the cliche, we're going to make everybody liberal democracies around the world. Pat was saying that wasn't going to happen. The great advantage Trump had, really, is that he didn't have to warn people about what was going to happen. We had seen it. We knew Iraq was a disaster. We saw the American industrial base destroyed by allowing China into the WTO. So what Pat was doing was, in a way, lighting the signal fire to say, Mordor is coming, beware. And people said, well, no, we've heard this warning before. Nothing bad will happen. It was here when Trump came, and so Americans were awake to the fact that something needed to be done. I really do hope that, frankly, Donald Trump should award Pat Buchanan a Medal of Freedom, because he was a precursor to so much of what we're doing today. Look, I'm not saying I don't think Trump was inspired by Pat. Actually, if you look at Pat Buchanan's what Pat Buchanan was saying early on, Trump was saying the same things back then. He just wasn't primarily in politics. But I do think Pat deserves a very public recognition from the American people for what he warned us about. It all came true.
All right, but that's really well said, John. Okay, so let's get down to business here. So what is it's a moving target, and it feels like things could be totally different when the show comes out. But I'll tell you, last night, I got some calls from some very smart people, people who I think are very hip to the economy, and not people who are panicans, but people who are deeply informed and speak to economists regularly. And they told me today's the big day. The stock market is going to crash. This is the end. And right now, it's so volatile, but right now we're having this conversation. The Dow's up 200 points. Where are we at?
Yeah, so I actually think that we may have, trying to predict what happens in the stock market's a sucker's game, but I do think that we probably hit a bottom when at the end of last week, and we're sort of bouncing along near there, where the world realized Trump wasn't backing off of tariffs, and that was going to be bad for the incumbent stocks. I will say that, the incumbent stocks, what I mean by that is the companies that have done very well under the globalism regime are not going to necessarily easily adapt to the new regime. So you would expect maybe their earnings will be a little lower. There will be winners in this new world order, but we don't exactly know who they will be. So stocks go down. When the world realized Trump wasn't going to back off because the stocks went down 5 or 10 or 15%, I think that was setting in a bottom, because one of the reasons people thought the market would crash was we announced 100, bringing up the China tariffs to 104%. And China fires back with, okay, we're going up to 84% on you guys. If this had happened a couple months ago, that would have been headline news that would have crashed the market, but it's not. Why is that? I think a lot of it's already priced in. And I think a lot of people are saying, all right, instead of panicking now, we need to figure out what comes next. There may still be a couple of days of panic. Look, the weird things are happening in the bond market. Nobody can tell you exactly why. The Fed may eventually step in and say they're going to launch some sort of emergency facility to stabilize, not the stock market. They hate saying they'll stabilize the stock market, but the bond market.
Okay, so hold on, Carney, you're touching on so much. I have so many follow-ups. I don't want to lose track.
Yes.
So first of all, we announced the big tariffs on China. So first of all, before even the China tariffs, I think it's very noteworthy that we seem to be getting no trade war from anyone but China. Do I have that right? Is there anyone who's being a real hard nose other than China right now?
No, not at all, actually. And this is what I was saying earlier when I said it's going better than I thought it would. I actually thought everybody would sit around the table and try to, just to use Donald Trump saying who holds the cards. We do hold the cards, but I thought everybody would at least try to, see if we were bluffing, right? They would call and raise to see if we would back down. We're not backing down, and they didn't do that. Instead, we have the biggest economies saying, we're ready to negotiate. Particularly Asia it's super interesting. South Korea, Japan, enormous economy, are saying, we want a deal. We don't want a trade war. We are not looking to escalate this. We want to de-escalate. So Trump really did escalate to de-escalate. The European Union is going to be a little tougher. And then, as you said, China is not responding like this at all. Yeah. They're responding with, all right, let's see what happens. And we are willing to try to face you down. China's a tough country. Remember what they did during COVID. We all remember how traumatic the lockdowns were for us. And in Europe and in many places, they were even worse. What China did was literally nail people into their apartments, right? It was so severe that, and yet they kept going. Right? It didn't destroy the country. They kept going. So I think China looks at it. They think democracy is a weak political system. So they think, well, maybe we can outlast Donald Trump. Maybe we don't have to outlast him for 4 years, maybe just 2 years, and then they lose in the midterm elections. And so they really are thinking we might be able to outlast this. So I think that's going to be a tough fight. I don't think that they crumble very easily.
Okay, so we touched on the China, so they retaliated with 84% tariffs on U.S. goods. Why 84%, and what were the goods they were targeting?
So they are targeting almost everything, but they don't buy that much from us. They buy agricultural products a lot. And so one of the things that they want to target is American farmers. They like that because they know American farmers voted for Donald Trump. And they want to try to maximize what they look at as the political pain for Trump. So they want to say, okay, we're going to tariff your farm products. That's a dangerous game for them to play, frankly, because China has a lot of people and they need a lot of food. And there's not a lot of other places they can go. So they can raise the tariffs on American agriculture, but it's not going to go great for them. And so we'll see how that, plays out. We also have the ability to give our farmers some relief. If they are being targeted we did this in the first Trump term, if they are being targeted by China directly, which they are, then we can say, all right, we're going to create a China relief program. The U.S. government will buy the share of your crops that the Chinese government will not. And frankly, what are we going to do with that food? I don't know, we shut down USAID, so maybe we can distribute that to some poorer countries around the world who otherwise might be, buying Chinese merchandise. But we don't need to allow China to target any segment of America. We have the fiscal capacity to deal with this.
All right. So the bond market is apparently cratering, and I know that the Fed's probably going to be dealing with this perhaps in the interim between when we're having this conversation when it airs, John. So try to give us the best information you can. But for starters, for people who are more casual observers of the stock market, not heavily invested in things like bonds, can you tell us just for a 101 version of what people need to know about the bond market and why is that seemingly doing worse than the stock market?
So first of all, the bond market is the biggest market in the world. It's bigger than stocks, right? The U.S. Treasuries are gigantic. They're the biggest part of the bond market. So when we have a deficit spending, we issue bonds to pay for it. People all around the world buy this. American banks, American individuals, savers buy it, but so do central banks. Corporations are huge investors in treasuries. Anybody who has some extra dollars that they don't want to put at risk can buy U.S. Treasuries. The reason why I say don't want to put at risk is because the United States government can never run out of money to pay off U.S. Treasuries because we print the money, right? We say we owe you, you lend us $1,000, we owe you $1,000 plus interest. We can always pay that. So it is the safe asset in the world. Not every country can say that. The EU can't say that. Italy's bonds aren't safe in the same way because Italy doesn't control its money supply. So it's the safest asset in the world. And usually what happens when there's a lot of stock market volatility, when people are worried about the economy, they buy lots of bonds because they want to get out of the risky stuff, which is stocks, and get into the safest stuff. The weird thing we're seeing right now is the stock market has been going down, but people aren't going into bonds. In fact, it seems like there are big sellers of bonds. Nobody knows exactly who or why, and it could be a big combination. It could be some central banks are trying to load up on dollars right now, because what happens when you sell a treasury is you end up with more dollars. Right, so you bought a treasury because you had extra dollars. You sell the treasury, you still have extra dollars now. So you've traded one government asset, a treasury, for a different government asset, a government liability, a treasury for a different government liability, the U.S. dollar. So somebody's accumulating dollars because the dollar hasn't crashed. It's gone down, but it hasn't crashed. Somebody, maybe a whole bunch of somebodies. Could be China. People are saying maybe China's dumping some treasuries. Could be. But again, that would just mean they're accumulating dollars, which would be weird. It could be some hedge funds. There are some very large hedge funds. People saying, I want to have a lot of high liquidity in case something happens. Could be banks. Could be central banks around the globe. It could be all of the above. And we really aren't sure how far this goes. If the sell-off in treasuries becomes what the Fed likes to call disorderly, meaning people start to panic about treasuries, the Fed will step in and they will say, we're going to buy a whole bunch of these things. That's actually the core thing the Fed is supposed to do, is be they call it the lender of last resort, create stability in the lending market and in the bond market. So they will step in, but that's not necessary yet. I don't think they're going to do that unless things get worse from here on. And with the stock market stabilizing, maybe things don't get worse. With the news that all these countries besides China want to negotiate, things might not get worse. These are all very positive developments, and I think upside surprise developments. The market didn't think remember when, I think the last time we talked about this, we mentioned this, that people really thought that the world was going to give the middle finger to Donald Trump if he tried to impose tariffs. Right? They were like, oh, it'll be a trade war. They're never going to give in to him.
Right. But
that's not what they want. They want access to the U.S. market. I said that from the beginning. I didn't think they would do it, but I did think they would resist for a little while longer. Instead, I think Donald Trump has convinced them that he's not bluffing. They think he holds the cards that he does, And so they're coming to the table to negotiate. And by the way, the person that they're having Scott Bessent lead these negotiations, he's excellent at this.
Yes.
And he's the Treasury Secretary.
So this is where I want to go with the negotiations, because do you do individual negotiations, which just sounds hard, or you do some sort of a group negotiation, but does that involve making some sort of a new, dare I say, globalist entity where clearly we would be the hegemon here, but we still don't. I don't know if that's better. So it sounds like both of these options are kind of tough. What do we think?
Yeah, so you're right. We impose tariffs on hundreds of countries, and it's really hard to sit down with all of them and hold, individual negotiations. I made a joke on X today because there was a story in Bloomberg that said countries are calling the White House to try to schedule negotiations and they can't get through. And I was like, you wonder if there's like a voice message that's like, call times are extraordinarily hard right now.
Right.
Press 2 to leave your number, and a representative will get back to you at the earliest available opportunity. I think that it's going to be very hard to negotiate with everybody. I don't think that they want to do a giant multilateral deal, though, and I don't think they want to create new international organizations either. I think what they will do instead is do a model. Find a country, South Korea, Japan. My bet is Japan. Look, people can come back. Maybe it won't be Japan, but if you're watching this and it is Japan, send an email to Alex and say, Carney got it right again. That's amazing. So I think they want to do a model deal where you say, okay, this is how we're getting rid of tariffs on Japan. And here's how we are going to use that. If you will do what Japan did, everybody else, then you will also get a deal. So rather than trying to negotiate, 150 deals around the globe, you negotiate one with somebody and invite everybody else to sign up to essentially the same thing. And I think that's how you get around the conundrum of like, how do you resolve this with everyone? And then China's going to be the outlier. They're not going to do, if we do get an arrangement with Japan, that will not be what China is willing to accept.
Okay, so 2 closing questions for you, John. First of all, I know you're not a Panican yet. Is there anything that could make you a Panican?
Not anything in the near term. When I think about this, I say, yes, look, if a year from now, unemployment is at 10% and inflation is at 10%, then I will say, all right, look, it didn't work, right? But the probability that I think that could happen is close to 0. When somebody asked me, like, how bad would an economic disaster have to be to get you to say this was the wrong thing? I said, well, that's a little like asking me, would I agree that we should switch to driving on the left side of the street like England does, rather than on the right side? And I said, well, why would I do that? And if you told me that if we don't switch, a meteor will destroy all life on Earth, I'd say, yeah, okay, let's switch which side of the street we drive on. But I don't think that's a possibility, right? It's not. I don't think that we're facing imminent economic doom from this. I actually think that it is going to very quickly get very good, except for the China part. I think that's going to be tough. But I don't think that we're, the gloom and doom scenarios, I don't expect to happen right, anytime at all. And I don't really, I'll just say, I don't really think we should give the stock market a veto. There's no level of stock market volatility that will make me be like, okay, that's it. We're down 14% now. We got to, everybody go home.
Yeah.
That happens. Look, sometimes when you do the right thing, when you adopt the right policy, sometimes you go to war when you need to, and the stock market goes down. Sometimes you raise interest rates, you're the Federal Reserve, and the stock market goes down. You can't give the stock market a veto on your public policy.
Totally agreed. And you've been the clearest pointing this out. One other thing, John, this is the last thing that I'll say, and this is an important one, though, is what do you tell the Panicans in your life right now?
That's what I tell them is like, guys, this is going to work out really well. You have to, you're not looking to you weren't cashing out your portfolio today. Unless, you don't panic and don't do that, first of all. But second, that wasn't what your plan was anyway. This is going to be very good for the American economy. It's going to be very good for American politics. It's going to actually be good for the world economy. So all we have to do is right now stay the course. To quote FDR, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We can make it through this. And what I said in the beginning is very true. We have to make it through this. This is not just the hill that we have to fight for and win. This is the last hill we get to stand on. If we don't win this, just raise the white flag, people. But we're not going to do that. We're going to win.
We're going to win. I love it. John, you're a leader in this. And I will say, I am with you on every step of the way, aside from, I hope one day soon, thanks to science, we will be able to fear the megalodon because we will be reviving it. Because now that we have these genetic capabilities, I've been thinking about that a lot. John, good luck driving on the other side of the road. I hope a meteor doesn't hit you when you're in Scotland, and we will miss you. We'll talk to you in a week and a half. All right, that's today's show. Thanks to our terrific producer, Misty, and all of you in the audience. Also, check out John's newsletter, Breitbart Business Digest, that I help him out. I'll be kind of taking the reins of that for a little while. But when John gets back, it will be his baby yet again. Must read if you want to know what's going on in the world. And that's it. Talk to you next time.